Good evening, Hawkeye fans. The Iowa Hawkeye men's basketball team falling this evening, 83-79. It's Iowa postgame with Coach Gary Close. We'll be joined by Coach Close here momentarily. Valiant effort in the second half today, folks. The Hawkeyes digging themselves yet another hole on the road. Different story, though, in the second half tonight as opposed to in Iowa's game on, what was that, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever it was, in Lincoln. The Hawkeyes digging deep and finding a way to get themselves a chance late. And unfortunately, missed free throws, a turnover on a possession that had a chance to either take the lead or at least tie it, send it to overtime. Iowa turns the ball over at an inopportune time, so the comeback falls short. A lot of fight, though, tonight. That's a good sign. I'll be anxious to get Coach Close's perspective on what we saw in that second half. For a matter of perspective, obviously, I don't have the official box score yet. I'm sure that'll be coming in here shortly. But to give people an idea, Iowa, I think, was shooting in the range of 35% in that first half. For the game, they ended up shooting 45%. So obviously, do the math there. They shot a good percentage in that second half and needed to overcome an 18-point deficit, and they just about got that done. So perhaps a sign of better things to come. I'm obviously disappointed that the comeback fell short, but we'll get Coach's perspective on this in a moment. And then speaking of Coach Close, there's the man of the hour, Coach Gary Close.
Hey, Corey, how's it going?
It's going good. I'm anxious to get your perspective on that second half. But before we get to that second half, obviously a valiant effort by Iowa out in State College. Let's talk about the first half. Iowa struggling to shoot the ball yet again, kind of a carryover. Even Sean Morris mentioned that, a carryover from their game the other night in Lincoln. Seemed like they were getting good looks once again, but shots just weren't falling. Is there a better explanation to that, Gary?
I'm not sure. I think that's probably pretty close. I think, I think where they fell short in the first half was on the defensive end. If they could play a little bit better defense and not gotten so far behind, then when you make the rally in the second half, you don't have to come back from as far, and maybe you win the game. So terrific effort. Penn State's good. I think Penn State's one of the more improved teams in the league. They've got a pretty good basketball team, and they played well. And Iowa had a possession to tie or win the game, and unfortunately didn't even get a shot off. So, but a good effort and something they can build on.
I want to read you some comments here from some of our listeners during that first half, just to give you some perspective of. I'm sure you have an idea of where fans' heads were when they saw the shooting struggles and digging yourself an early 18-point lead. Michael says Fran doesn't believe in his guys. JT, Connor's a liability. Barry, fire the offensive coordinator. D. Heim, this team is really, really bad. This might be the worst Fran team ever. I mean, there's obviously this sense of panic with the fan base when you go on any sort of a losing streak, but
sure.
I understand it to an extent. Were you feeling any of that at halftime? Like, man, this is I know we talked the other night about giving this team time to be together, and they haven't had a lot of practice days even since the game against Nebraska. But how were you feeling at halftime, I guess?
Well, as I mentioned before, I was a little more concerned with them at the defensive end. Penn State's numbers in the first half were off the charts. I think they shot, well over 50%. I think I might even have kept the stats. I think in the first half they were 5 for 8 in layups, and they were 6 for 10 from threes. And they're the best 3-point shooting team in the league. And so you just can't give them threes. That's the scouting report going in, and they made all their free throws. So they only got 12 points on 2-point jump shots. And that's where you got to try to get a team to beat you. And they did make some tough 2-point jump shots, but I thought I was a little more concerned with the defensive end. They've been struggling shooting the ball, and fortunately, it looked like they showed signs of coming out of that. At least a couple players did in the second half. And hopefully that's what's going to happen going down the road. But you can't fault the effort. The effort was terrific. They could have easily packed it in at the end of the half. And like we said, had a chance to win a game, which, at halftime you wouldn't have never thought could possibly happen. So hats off for the effort.
We got a lot of Pickett versus Rebracha tonight, which is probably not a great matchup for Iowa. I thought Phillip held his own, but is that a result of, obviously it was a result of Iowa switching on everything, but is that Iowa trying to limit Penn State from behind the arc?
Well, they just made a plan to switch all ball screens, and I wasn't sure. Pickett's good. I didn't like that particularly. Not that it was terribly bad. I mean, but I think where they really hurt themselves is a lot of times they overhelped and left 3-point shooters open, and it's almost like a double-edged sword. It's almost like they start too extended because they're afraid of the three, and then they give up dribble penetration, and then they've got to collapse the ball, and that's when they kick it out and get wider open threes. And the one kid, Funk, you can't leave, period. You just can't leave him. He's too good a 3-point shooter, and I think he made 5. And I think that's what really hurt him in the first half, in addition to not shooting well. But I think if they'd have played a little better defense and been 10 down rather than 18, in hopes that, hopefully the shots would start falling, which they did in the second half. They did a terrific job attacking the basket in the second half and got Penn State in foul trouble early, got to the penalty, got some kickouts for threes, got some strong baskets, shots around the basket. And that's how they whittled down the lead and shot a much higher percentage in the second half. And that's when they're playing well, that's what they're doing. They're getting points from inside as well as out.
If my memory serves me correctly, that first half was probably their 4th straight half where they did struggle to shoot the ball. And I agree with you on the defensive end. There were issues, and I think there remain issues, but they had went 4 straight halves. You go back to the Eastern Illinois game, and then of course Nebraska all game, and then first half where they struggled to shoot the ball. They come out in the second half. I don't have the percentages in front of me, but they shot over 50%. I'm confident in saying that.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Stat shot in front of me. So how does your mindset change? Does it change? Do you feel different after watching a comeback, albeit falling short? I mean, does this change your opinion at all about where things are at?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a road game. That team's pretty good. They were down big. You don't like to lose. That's the bottom line. But there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to go into that place and get beat. And so, no, I think the second half gives you reason for optimism. I thought they played pretty well in the second half and had a chance to win it, and fortunately didn't get a shot off. So, they've obviously got to play a more complete half or game. They can't afford to have so many empty possessions, in the first half, for example. So, no, I think it's a step in the right direction, and hopefully they can build on that.
I feel like I ask you this every single game, Gary. What do you do with Peyton Sandfort right now? Because it's just snowballing. Yeah,
there's no doubt. I think you encourage him. I'm sure he's working hard at it. It's you can tell they're beginning to lose some confidence in him. The bench was even shorter tonight. I don't know the final minutes, but they played basically 6 guys, and for the most part, maybe 7. I bet Sanford didn't even get 10 minutes.
Yeah,
and
he got 8 minutes. 8 minutes.
Yeah, so the bench is getting shorter, and I get it. They got to go with the guys they think can get him a W, and then keep working with him in hopes that he'll come out of it. But it is a tough stretch he's going through.
And I understand Dasonte Bowen's not playing out of this world. I still think he needs more minutes than 12 a game. If my vantage point, I'm not there in practice every day, Gary, but I'm watching Ulis and Bowen play. I don't really see a difference between those two guys, other than Ulis has, I think, established himself as a mistake guy. I don't know how many turnovers he had tonight. He didn't have as many as he has in past games, but I go back to something Don Patterson has said on the football show. If you got 2 guys who are kind of equal, go with the younger guy. Go with the guy who's got more room for potential and growth. Bowen had 12 minutes tonight. Saw time extended there at the end as the comeback was on. Your thoughts on him, and of course Dix going down with the injury, the 2 freshmen.
Yeah, the injury hurt Dix because I think they were trying to get him some more minutes. I think you could possibly see it. I think you go with the older guy who's has some proven ability, so to speak. But there'll probably be a time where that may change, and it might be coming sooner rather than later. A lot of it will depend upon practice and then how he keeps progressing. But I think there's a chance that may happen.
Ulis can't shoot, Gary.
He's struggling big time. Yeah, his shots aren't even close.
No,
which is surprising. He's not that bad, but boy, he is really struggling now, and it's tough to see.
All right, before we get to our first, we've got a number of callers here waiting to speak with you, Gary, which we both appreciate despite the loss. Again, Iowa falling to Penn State in the road 83-79 on this Sunday. I want to give a shout out to Brad Van Meter and his team down in Des Moines at State Farm on Fleur Drive. 515-256-6480, the number to contact Brad and his team for an insurance quote. They'll give you great rates on a number of different packages, including rates on auto insurance, renter's insurance, boat insurance once we hit spring and we get the summer months back. Again, Brad Van Meter down on Fleur Drive in Des Moines. Visit him online at www.bradvanmeter.com. All right, we've got someone on the phone line here. Let's get to our first call. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Gary Close. Who's on the line?
This is Pat from Wyoming.
Hey, Pat.
Hey, Gary. How you doing?
Good, Pat. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Would you agree that over the last 5 years, the Iowa basketball team has been inhibited from winning more games by their lack of holding the opponent on defense?
Well, I think like a lot of teams, and not just Iowa, but I think more often than not, when you're not on the right side of the ledger, it's usually at the defensive end. Not always, but I think for the most part, that's the case. So, but I think you can say that for a lot of teams, even teams that play good defense. Playing good defense is not easy to do. So I think, at the times where they have fallen short in most cases, because they've been a really good offensive team, it's probably been at defensive end, but you can say that for a lot of teams.
Okay. One comment from you really caught my ear. Why is playing good defense hard to do?
Well, because it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of teamwork. This day and age where you've got guys that can shoot threes and guys that can attack the basket, you're covering a lot of the court, and the defense is a lot more intricate than people think, and you've got to have all five guys working together. And when you don't, things break down, and in some cases they don't make the shot, which doesn't expose maybe a bad defensive play, but those odds will catch up with you. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of teamwork. And the way the game's being played now, the court is so much bigger with the way teams can shoot threes and attack the basket that you're covering a lot of ground and puts a lot of pressure on your defense.
Good answer. So then over the last 5 years, if it's hard to do and it takes good teamwork, do you think Fran and his staff should change their standpoint on what it takes to win games? Because you just said that defense is hard, stopping the other team from scoring is hard, and the metrics clearly point that Iowa has not been able to do a good job over the last 5 years. Offense great, but can't get stops. At what point do you think the coaching staff says, maybe we should recalibrate? Because Iowa clearly can't defend the high screen pick and roll, and this has been happening for 5 years. So at what point do you say recalibrate?
This is who Fran is. I'm not to interrupt you, Gary, but this is who Fran is, caller. I mean, he's an offensive coach. One could make the argument. I go back to, and Gary, you know this because you coached in the conference when this happened. John Beilein making a change, I believe he hired a guy from Northern Illinois who is known as a defensive-minded coach, and that was kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, that was kind of John's way of admitting, hey, I really don't know defense. I'm not a defensive coach. I'm going to hire somebody who understands that. Fran has not done that. Fran has hired guys he's comfortable with, which I understand too. Guys like Courtney Eldridge, Matt Gatens, and Andrew Francis, etc. Is that fair to say, Gary? That's just not who he is. I'm not making excuses.
Well, I think we all got our strengths and got our weaknesses, and we all have ways in which we like to coach and what we're comfortable with. And you've got a certain amount of time in a day for practice that you've got to break into what you want to emphasize and what you want to teach and coach. And so everybody's a little bit different. I think their defense has improved over the last few years, and I think that's one of the reasons why they've been have been even more successful. They're not where they want to be now, and I think they'll probably say the same thing about their offense. They're not there yet, and we've discussed why. The question is, will they get there? And that's gonna be the one that's got to be answered here going down the road. They're not as deep. Their margin of error is not as great as it's been in the past, so they've got some things going against them. But they had some positives tonight that they can build on, and that's what I think they're going to do. And hopefully they'll continue to improve. But this is a tough league to play in and to get better in, and they've got their work cut out for them.
One thing I do appreciate about Fran here in recent years, caller, too, is I felt like, and this is my perception from 3 to 4 years ago, I felt like there were times where Fran was hesitant to acknowledge, especially in post-game press conferences, hey, our defense just kind of sucked when it was obvious. I mean, I go back to a loss at Minnesota a few years ago where Iowa gave up over 100 points. And I distinctly remember me feeling like we were in denial as a coaching staff. I go back to the game after Nebraska, the Lincoln loss. Fran made a point. His last thing he said in that press conference is, we got to be able to play better defense when our shots aren't falling. And it'd be easy for Fran to just, Gary, it'd be easy for Fran to just defer to the shooting percentage. We're not going to win games shooting 30%. Yeah. But instead he said, we got to defend better when the shots aren't falling. Now, I understand admitting and accepting is different than actually doing, but that is something where I agree with you. I think the defense has improved in recent years. It does have a long ways to go, but that would be my feeling on it, caller.
Well, I think a lot of people, they just assume you go out there and you play hard and you play tough and aggressive and you can play pretty good defense. And it doesn't work that way. It's a lot more complicated. It's a lot more difficult. And especially this day and age when you got so many different ways people can score now. So it's their team is definitely a work in progress at both ends, and they're going to have to improve like everybody does. That's going to be the key thing. Can they keep getting better? I think they made significant improvement from the last game, and hopefully that'll continue, and they can get themselves a win here, and then try to see if they can get a streak going, which could happen. This is a crazy game.
Well, Coy, I'm not going to hold you up, but over the last 25 years, no NCAA championship basketball team has ever been lower than number 22 in the Kim Palm defensive rankings.
Yeah.
Over the last 8 years, Iowa has never been better than 60.
I know.
And so let's just narrow that down to the Big Ten. And I love Fran. I love Iowa basketball. But at some point, you have to go, are we on the right track to coach to the metrics to what it takes to win, A, the Big Ten, and B, in the NCAA tournament? So, and I appreciate Gary said it is really hard. Yes, it's hard to win basketball games. These are players that are recruited on both ends. They get scholarships. So my real question is, you just don't win in this league without shutting teams down. You don't win in this league by not being able to defend the high screen and ball pick and roll. And so at some point, Gary and you have to go, yeah, they're getting better. They're trying, and their defense is getting better. But at some point, it has to exponentially improve, because I just don't think Fran's he's a great offensive coach. I love the guy. I love the way they play offense, and it's exciting brand of basketball. But at what point do you go? This is a path to nowhere. Anyway, I'll hang up. Thanks, guys. I appreciate the show, and I do believe Iowa played better tonight as far as intensity and trying to get that win. All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for the call. Yeah.
Oh,
You mentioned the high ball screen, which, you see ball screens all over the place. And the reason why you do is because that might be the most difficult thing to defend. And there are a lot of different ways to do it. I know from my experience, sometimes it would change from year to year, depending upon your personnel, depending upon who you were guarding. It's a tough, you watch an NBA game, and if there's not a ball screen every single possession, I'll be shocked. And that's the reason. It's a really tough offensive thing to cover. And, today they chose to switch it and let the big guys play Pickett. I think they figured if they could keep Pickett from getting to the rim and make him shoot over some length, then maybe that would work. And at times it did, at times it didn't. So he's good. Pickett might be as good a guard as there is in the league. I mean, he is really good. And then he's got the best 3-point shooter on one wing that, you can't help off of. So, you play a team that can't shoot threes, your defense could be a lot different than one that can. And that was the challenge that Iowa had tonight is not only can the Penn State attack the basket, but they can shoot the three. So they're putting a lot of pressure on your defense.
All right, we've got Kyle, Ryan, Doug, James on hold. Let's get to Kyle here. Kyle, welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks, guys. First off, Corey, thanks for what you do. We have successfully evangelized all my family members to watch your show. You and Gary and Don, you guys do great work. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Just two quick observations. Number one, just as I've watched the Hawks over the years, I don't sense that what we turned on at the end of the game was really good to see. Right, I was grateful for that. We didn't seem to have that energy at the beginning of the game or the last couple games. But I don't know that that's totally in our DNA all the time. Right away I saw Penn State's bench would get up off their bench players would get up and cheer when they would stop dribble drive penetration or get back on transition defense like that. That was very clearly something that they valued. And so sometimes there's just part of me that struggles to believe that it'll ever be a full part of our DNA because we are so offensively minded. And I want to be careful to say I don't think that's a huge criticism because we win so many games because of how good we are offensively. And you saw that in the second half. We didn't have a shot to win that game unless we really scored. So I don't know what that means, but it does make me question if that level of toughness that we're looking for on the defensive end is ever going to be a part of our DNA just because of the way we play. And then the second observation would just be my brother last year made a comment in our family group text that I don't know why I didn't see at the point at the time he made it, but it was just made so much sense that the best teams have guys who are basically really good depth everywhere, kind of the top half. You don't need the best player at every position, and we've had that the last 3 years, right? The last 3 years we've had the best player in the Big Ten with Luka Garza and Keegan Murray, but one of the things maybe we didn't have is maybe a top half of the league player at other positions to support that. And I think you're really seeing that this year, that Chris is probably a top half player. Philip is a little bit out of position, but I think his effort and the way he's grown, he's probably close to mid-tier as a center, but certainly a little out of position. But I don't necessarily see anybody else who really jumps off the page that I go, that guy is a top 6 or 7 player at his position. And to Gary's point earlier, we don't have the same depth we did even last year, having Chris coming off the bench and so our depth certainly is a problem, but also just our general lack of ability to maybe have another player to go to, I guess is my point. I love Aaron Eulis and some of the things he can do, but he's probably not even close to a top half of the league point guard. And Perkins is great, but anyways, go ahead.
Kyle, I just am curious, what I'm not saying that Ulis isn't offering anything. I'm sure he's offering leadership and whatnot. Yep. What is he offering that you like right now? Because I'm struggling to stay on that Ulis train.
I'm just trying to not let my massive. I'm not super hopeful, but I'm not hopeful, but I'm trying not to be super negative, I guess is my point. Yeah. I'd like to see Desante play, but
I think those are good observations. It's it's a bit of a crapshoot. You bring kids in, and the Murrays are a good example. Who would have thought that Keegan Murray would develop into the fourth pick taken in the NBA draft? You don't know. So you recruit guys that you think got potential, that work hard, that are good kids, but how they develop is up in the air. I think they would have thought by now that Sanford would be giving him better minutes. Ulis would be giving him better minutes. I think they're probably hoping one of those big guys would have developed. They haven't. That's just the bottom line. Whereas in other years, they have had some development. And so that happens. And so you got to continue to work with them. I think Peyton Sanford's got a chance to be he's only a sophomore. I think he's got a chance to be a good player. He is really going through a tough deal right now, and he's going to have to play himself out of it. And Ulis has shown some flashes, but he hasn't been consistent. Perkins, I think, is on the verge of being one of the top guards in the league. He's still a little bit inconsistent, but that's all a part of developing into a player. And you can name all kinds of players. We had a kid at Wisconsin, Frank Kaminsky, who didn't even see the court for 2 years. And by the time he was done, he was a national player of the year.
Yeah, he's really good.
So you just don't know how that's all going to develop. You just got to keep working and hope that, players develop. And right now, some of those guys probably haven't developed as quickly or as much as they would have thought they might, but that's college basketball. And so we just got to keep working and hope something's going to happen here.
Agreed.
I think your observations are accurate.
Yeah, I'm not trying to rip on Aaron Ulis. You talked about our guard court on our last show, and how about Tony came out today and attacked early? They get 4 quick points out of the gate, and he seemed to have a different gear tonight, which was good to see. I didn't shoot the ball. Well, I actually shot the ball pretty well. 6 of 12, 17 points, 7 boards. Those 7 boards are an indication, though, that to me that he was being more aggressive tonight. What'd you see out of TP?
Yeah, I thought he played much better and was very encouraging. And obviously, we've got to have that. He didn't have a turnover until his last one, and those guards put pretty good pressure on there. So no, I thought he played a solid game and one to build on. And he's shown it in the past. So you can't give up on him. The other guards are young and developing in a lot of ways, and somebody's got to hopefully emerge. And then if they don't, then obviously it puts more pressure on guys like Perkins and Connor and other players like that. So time will tell.
Is it fair to say right now, Gary, especially on the offensive end, that it's hard to win ball games for a team that's this thin? And when I say thin, they're not 9, 10, 11 deep. When you have multiple guys who are in a funk, like Sanford's been in a funk all season. Patrick McCaffrey is in a major funk right now.
Yep.
I mean, he's completely ineffective on offense. Whereas it wasn't that long ago that he was, I don't know if it was the Southeast Missouri State game, but he had a game not that long ago where he was best player on the floor.
Yep. And that's part of being a young player. You're going to be up and down, and hopefully there's going to be more ups than downs as you develop. No, we've talked about their margin of error is very thin. So if you don't get anything from Patrick and you don't get anything from Ulis, and you're left with Chris and Rabracha and Tony, it's there's not a lot there. They got to be pretty good or you're in trouble. And in past games, they've struggled too, and that's been the result of why they've struggled. Tonight, Murray was terrific. I think Perkins was very good. Rabracha had his moments, and Connor played pretty well. But beyond that, the rest of the guys struggled, and so now you're in a dogfight, and unfortunately, they were one basket away from getting a hell of a road win.
I know he's got limitations, Gary, but especially if Dix is out for any period of time, I would not be shocked if we see Carter here and there, just because of his ability to make threes.
Possibly. Yep. Possibly. Yep.
Yeah, and then again, just the lack of depth. Let's get to Ryan, who's been on hold. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Good evening, guys. Happy New Year, Corey. Happy New Year, Coach.
Ryan, Happy New Year to you too.
Thank you, sir. I didn't have the worst day today, but the game was very disheartening. I do worry that we're not far away from Licklider-like crowds again. This is a program.
Penn State had one in there today.
I know. There was I was about to say this. I had it on my notes, Corey. Don't say, well, it's a road game. There's 165 people counting the concessionaires and the.
I have the official box score according to. I have the official NCAA box score. 6,000 people, Gary.
And only 165 showed up, and about 65 of them were working. I mean, it was just that ain't no road game. But anyway,
the biggest mistake they made is they built that big, huge arena that's ugly, and they had that small bandbox where they filled it. I mean, they were filled every night. It was loud. Trust me, I was in that arena, or gym is probably what it was called. And they, the day and age of college athletics, they built a big, huge facility, and it's multi-purpose. So you got concerts and all that kind of deal, but. It's a tiny town. They're out in the middle of nowhere. That's a small college town out in the middle of nowhere. They got, they're not drawing from big cities. So that was their mistake. I think they built too big an arena that's too hard to fill.
Well, what isn't ugly about Penn State? But anyway, I digress. Oh, it's got beautiful atmosphere around it. I was in the area before, but anyway, hey, I want to give Iowa a little bit of credit. Chris Murray, my God, he did all he could. He looked fantastic. Phillip looked good, and so did Perkins until he gave up that careless turnover dagger at the very end. Now, this kind of goes back to what I talked about last time, Coach, that we discussed. And I am sick and tired of Iowa getting hosed constantly. Now, we've had an atrocious first half, and I am not trying to say we're a good team right now, because we're not. I'm not saying that at all. But that valiant effort in the second half, are you trying to, or anybody, not you, Coach, but if anybody trying to tell me that if Connor McCaffrey had a Wisconsin jersey on, or a Michigan State jersey, or a Michigan jersey, that a blind mouse referee in the game wouldn't have been able to easily call that lane violation, number one. And then, number two, Seth Lundy slams the ball into the crowd with 3 seconds to go. Oh, I know you don't want to call a technical foul, but where in the rule book does it say that you only can call technical fouls from that, before under 2 minutes? I mean, that was and so, you try that on Wisconsin back in the Bo Ryan days, he would have absolutely eviscerated you. You do it to Tom Izzo, he'd probably get one of his shooting guards, Keith Appling, to go after you. Or John Howard. Yeah, a 6'9" professional athlete behemoth who's already slapped a coach pretty hard in the side of the head once. Well, who's to say a 60-year-old referee wouldn't get that treatment from that intimidating guy? I mean, there are a different set of rules, and it's always when the game is on the line. I know the argument is, well, you shouldn't have had to come back that late. But at the end of the day, it was what, a 3-point game with under 2 minutes to go? Every point counts, and the rules don't change. It's not like football where if it's under 2 minutes, something, the rules are a little different, whether you can review it or not, or what have you. The only time, wait, real quick, Corey, the only time I ever saw a call go Iowa's way late is when we got the grade guard special, which was Brad Davison nailing Connor in the family jewels, and that had to actually be reviewed because it wasn't caught the first time. We were up by about 2 or 3 with less than a minute to go, and then with all the technical fouls and they threw his butt out, then we, I think, won by 7 that day. That's maybe the only time I saw something go Iowa's way that should have gone Iowa's way. I'm really getting sick of this. I'm sorry, but that's how I feel. And you can see these kind of corrupt things all the time. They would never dare do that if that was a Michigan State uniform that Connor was wearing, Wisconsin or Michigan in particular.
Ryan, let me jump in here for a second. I'm sorry. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you, even though you're not laughing. So,
and sorry about your Eagles today.
Oh God, they're terrible.
I was rooting for them.
Don't bring that up. But as it relates to the lane violation, I'm not defending the officials. It was a lane violation. But Gary, is there a chance the official didn't call it because Tony also
got tripped? He got tripped.
I'm saying I don't know if that's true, but I'm just saying from the official's perspective, you see both teams invade the lane. You're not going to call a lane violation. Is that effective?
No, I think he missed it. I think it probably should have been called. Yeah.
I'm sure he did, but I'm just saying, regardless,
make the free throw.
Well, that too, and you know what? Here's the other thing. Right now, Connor, his free throw percentage for the season is like 85%. It should be like 60% because he's missed the front end of I don't know how many attempts, but he's gotten like 6 lane violations this year because of that weird motion that he's got where he kind of double clutches, and apparently that's not on the scouting report. So you're right, though. Make the free throw. And he's missed a lot of those front ends. And Chris Murray missed a bunch of, several free throws tonight for a guy who makes a lot.
Yeah.
Sure, make the free throw. But first of all, the Penn State's left foot was in the lane first, and his right foot was tripping Perkins into the lane. And then, since when can you slam the ball into the crowd and absolutely not a word is said? 3.2 seconds to go. I'm really sorry, but tough. A rule is a rule. Is it a pass interference in football? If you mug the guy in the end zone on the last play of the game, they'll always say you got to call it if it's within regulation. Well, 3.2 seconds is still in regulation. It never goes against us, but I guarantee you if that was Michigan, Wisconsin, or Michigan State uniforms we were wearing, the result would have been different because of they would never let that go. However, I will say it sucks that we have to let it get to be where a bad miss by a ref here or there is the difference of the game. I get it. But at the end of the day, it's still about what is the score with the amount of time left. And we've had many, many, many games in the Big Ten where 1 point means everything.
I thought the foul on Connor was kind of suspect down low towards the end, Gary. You're probably going to say he reached in, but I thought it was a travel.
If you whack down, you're going to get called for that every single time. You can't reach in. You just can't do it. When the official that's standing underneath the basket, if he can't see your hands, we always tell our defenders, show your hands to the officials. If they can't see your hands, they think one thing, they got to be on somebody. And especially when you whack down, if you whack up, a lot of times you might get away with that, but whacking down, that call is going to be made 95% of the time, even if you get it clean. That's where you got to know how officials work. And I've told that before. I thought Iowa missed a lot of chances in the first half to score inside because they just rushed them so fast. A lot of times when you rush an inside post move, even if you get fouled, a lot of times it's not called because it's a weak move that doesn't give the referee a chance to really take a look and see what's happening. So that's part of playing the game and understanding officiating. And I thought we were much better in the second half, taking our time inside, shot faking, getting gathered, going up strong. I thought the first half we threw up a lot of quick floating, tipping shots that don't draw a lot of fouls.
Ryan, I got a plethora of callers, and I got to take a quick break. So I appreciate you calling, sir. And believe me, I'm on your side. I was frustrated by the lane violation too. So, anyways,
Thanks,
well, and the slamming the ball with no tee called. I mean, it's the first time I ever seen a tee not being called in that situation.
Yeah,
thank you.
Appreciate it, Ryan. Thank you, sir. All right, folks, we are talking Iowa Penn State. We've got callers on hold. If you want to join the show, there's a link in the description below. Before we come back with more of you and more of Coach Close and I, let's get a word from our sponsor. Of course, we appreciate all of our sponsors, Ascent Nutrition, sponsoring our show this evening. We'll get a quick word from them, and then we'll be right back here. Iowa Postgame with Coach Gary Close. Hawkeye fans, let's talk about health and performance optimization for a moment. Our sponsor, Ascent Nutrition, offers amazing products. It's actually owned by former Iowa graduate Lance Shuttler. Now, I've decided to partner with Ascent Nutrition because of their unique approach to human health. Ascent offers an organically grown, mold and mycotoxin-free coffee. It provides a pure, clean, and rich flavor without those pesticides that most coffees are treated with. They also offer an algae oil DHA, which is used to support brain health, memory, and focus, as well as proper nervous system development in adults, children, athletes, and even pets. Now, lastly, their unique crafted wild pine pollen is used to support cardiovascular health, hormonal function, and a healthy libido. Your purchase not only supports this channel, but the business of a former Hawkeye. Visit goascentnutrition.com or click the link in the description below and use the code Hawkeyes. That's the code Hawkeyes to receive 15% off your total order from Ascent Nutrition. We are back here, Iowa Postgame with Coach Gary Close. And how about this for a stat, Gary? I just looked at this in the official box score, which is available now. Just 7 turnovers for Iowa tonight. That is the second straight game where Iowa's kept that figure in double or in single digits. Maybe a good sign because they had some issues there for a 3 to 4 game stretch where they were turning the ball over. That looks to maybe have been corrected.
I think it's a pretty aggressive defensive team with some good physical guards. So, no, I thought they handled the ball real well.
All right, let's get to our caller who has been waiting patiently on hold. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Gary Close. Who's on the line?
This is John on the line.
Hey there. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, gentlemen?
We're doing all right.
Thanks for the call.
Just something I'm curious about. When the 7 to 9 players that were rotating through were struggling from the 3-point line, would there be a downside to bringing like Carter Kingsbury in and giving him 4 minutes to see what he could do?
I brought that up earlier, Gary.
Yeah, that's a good thought. He played earlier in the year when I think Ulis was hurt. It's a possibility. It's a coaching sometimes not real easy. You're trying to give your older players every benefit of the doubt. You don't want them to lose confidence, and yet you get to a point where, hey, maybe I got to try something new, and so maybe they've gotten to that point. That's something we'll have to watch for. But it's not an easy call. Today, Tony finally stepped up and played a lot better than he's played in the last couple of games, which was good to see. Ulis did not, and so it's a possibility. I think, especially with the lack of outside shooting, that maybe that'll be the case. And I think if they have a chance to have more practice time where they get a chance to see him more, then maybe that'll warrant it even more. So we're gonna have to wait and see.
And just for the record, too, I mean, I think, caller, it's a reasonable thing to ask, too, because the last time we saw Carter, the only time we've seen Carter in a real game situation, really, was against Wisconsin when they were down Ulis and Murray. And, of course, both those guys are back, but you potentially lost Josh Dix. Ogundele wasn't available for any minutes tonight due to a knee injury, and I did see one of our participants in the chat did ask what was going on with Ogundele. Excuse me. It was a knee issue. So I would think, caller, especially with Peyton Sandfort's struggles, that Carter would, I mean, who else are you going to go to next? I think he'd be the next guy off the bench in most scenarios.
Well, I think they'll continue to play Peyton. I don't, his minutes may get less as they did tonight, but they can't give up on him. He's got too much potential, and hopefully he's going to break out of it. So I don't see him not playing. The possibility of Kingsbury playing a little bit more for some other guards, is a possibility, but we'll just have to wait and see.
This is an observation, not a criticism, but Patrick seems like he likes to shoot a lot of fadeaway shots. Is he worried about getting these shot blocks, or what's the purpose in that?
I think it's more a lack of strength, he's not very strong, and therefore he tries to avoid contact. And the result is that you don't get a lot of free throws. And he's taken some tough shots the last couple of games that are not high percentage shots. Now he's made some of those, but this streak right now he's not, and he's not getting to the free throw line either. So I think it's more of a combination of a lack of strength and being a little young.
I was always taught you went straight up with your feet together, and it seemed like a fadeaway would increase the difficulty of the shot. But then,
no, I think that's a good observation.
So,
he's
all
always
right,
been,
gentlemen.
I was just say.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say too. He's always been that way too. I mean, that's just kind of how he's always played. He's kind of been unorthodox, and he shoots shots off his off foot, and just, I mean, he's just kind of always been that way. And it's obviously going to you're going to complain about it more, Gary, when those shots don't go in, right? I mean,
yeah, no doubt. When they go in, they look great. they look really great. It's the same thing when you don't shoot well. It looks like you're not playing very hard. I didn't think that was the case in the first half. They just didn't shoot well. I think it was the case at Nebraska. But I think he's a streaky player. There's no doubt. When he's on, he's pretty tough. When he's not, he's average. But you can say that for a lot of players. But they need him. I mean, to lose that game by basically 2 points with no production out of him, as well as a couple other guys, we just need a little bit, and our chances improve. So hopefully that's going to happen.
How much is shooting a basketball is muscle memory?
A fair amount. Yeah, it's something that you try to work on to get a consistent delivery. If your delivery is different all the time, then you're not going to be as consistent. So it's got a lot to do with that, and that comes through a lot of repetition and work. And the good shooters generally shoot the ball pretty much the same way all the time, that takes work.
Just one last question, real quick. Something I've never understood. And you take a player with the ball, and he's ramming his backside into the defensive player behind him, and they call the foul on the defensive guy. I've never understood that.
Yeah, you mean in the post you're talking about?
Yeah, down in the post, and he's trying to get closer to the basket. The offensive player's taking his rear end and ramming it into the guy, knocking him backwards, and then they turn around and call it on the defensive guy.
Yeah, it's a tough call with verticality, and we always taught that you take the first one, and then if he hits you again, go down and see if you can draw an offensive foul. It's they don't want to call everything in the post, and yet if an offensive player displaces a defensive player, it should be called, but it's usually not called unless the defensive player goes down.
Okay. All right, gentlemen. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank
you too.
All right, rolling along here. Iowa postgame with Coach Gary Close, talking about Iowa's defeat on the road in State College. Let's add Doug into the mix here. Doug, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing better than the Hawkeyes. It's
by the way, really... women too. Really frustrating win today for the women. Talk about fouling. Caitlin Clark, a couple of careless fouls, and she exits the game. And that, she's as important, if not more important, to the women's team as Chris Murray is to the men. Anyways, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying not to echo what other people have already said. But I did have a question, Corey, because you had the box score. How many threes did Pickett have? You have any threes?
Pickett had, let's see here.
I don't know if he had any.
He was 0 for 1. He was 10 of 16 from the field, so he was 10 of 15 from 2. And he was perfect from the line, 6 of 6.
Coach, why wouldn't you go under that or do something else? I like whenever the ball went to him, I'm like looking for where Rabracha is. I'm looking for his man to go up and screen. I mean, that's basically just an isolation play. I would think you'd do something where you won't let that happen. I mean, I was just a JV all-star, so I don't really know. But we always talked about if I knew my guy couldn't hit a three, I just went underneath him. But
I think that's a good observation. I don't know what Pickett is shooting from three for the year. That'd be good to find out. Because if you are playing against a guy that doesn't shoot threes, you might go under. I think their plan right from the get-go was to switch it. And I think Penn State saw that and said, okay, great. We feel comfortable with him going one-on-one against their big. And I think for the most part, they got that advantage. I think I'll be interested to see if and when they play again, if they don't change that, because I don't think it worked as well.
That is their only meeting.
That's their only meeting. Well,
yep.
We'll have to wait for the Big Ten tournament then, maybe.
Yeah.
Just for the record, yeah. Pickett is shooting 28% from three this year, averaging 1 make per game.
Yeah, so that's a possibility of potentially going under if you've worked on it. You know, it's easier said than done. But you know, we talked about earlier, there's a lot of ways to defend ball screens. That's one of them. But you got to work at it. It's not something that just comes because you want to do it. But I think that's, with those numbers, I think that would be a possibility with other teams. We'll have to watch Penn State play some other teams in the Big Ten and see how they play that. And I wouldn't be surprised if you do see some teams go under.
One of the people, and again, I'm not trying not to echo anything everyone's already said, basketball is designed to be an offensive game. I mean, as a defensive player, you're reactionary to the offensive player. I mean, nobody wants to see a game that's 26-19. You know, so, you know, I wasn't like too disappointed. The next 5 games are what matters. We have 4 of them at home. We got to get, I mean, Indiana's going to be tough, but you got to get at least 3 of them to even have a chance to get back into NCAA talk. I don't know how you feel about that, Corey, but, you know, I mean, right now we're not in NCAA talk, and we have 4 home games out of the next 5. And I really believe that we can win. If we play how we did in the second half, I believe we can win most of those. I don't think Rutgers at Rutgers is all that hard, but
you win against Indiana. Is Indiana a top 30 team in the net? I'm assuming they are right now. Okay,
yeah,
so
they're ranked 16th AP.
Home or away, quad 1 win right there. You know, if you can come back, ride some momentum from this second half, extra day off, I guess you could say, on off, but an extra day to get some practice in and hopefully, you know, give some guys some confidence shooting the basketball back in your own gym. You know, maybe you can steal one against Indiana. Boy, that can turn things around, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. They can find a way to get a win. It'll do a lot for their psychic. And certainly if you play a team that's ranked and you can beat them, that would be great. So that's a big game Thursday, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I think a lot of their games, their next 5, I'm not giving up on until I see what they do in the next 5 games. I mean, these 3 games were tough, but, you know, get a win against Indiana, get a road win against Rutgers, and we're talking completely different next Sunday. Yeah. You know,
record. We're probably having a totally. I mean, I know there's some negativity here, but overall, I think the vibe from you, Gary, certainly the vibe from me, has been rather positive. That would probably not be the case if they hadn't shot. I'm looking at the official box score. They shot 56% from the field in the second half.
Yeah.
I mean,
look what's happened to Maryland. Maryland was ranked in the top 15. They were undefeated. Now I think they're 0-3 in the league and got absolutely blasted by a Michigan team and lost to Central Michigan a couple of days ago. So until you see 4, 5, 6, 7 games into the Big Ten, you really don't have a feel for how good these teams are. And Maryland's a great example. I think Penn State's good. I think Penn State's got a chance to move into a different level in the standings from what they have in the past, primarily because of their guard play. I think that kid is as good a guard as in the league. Now, I haven't seen everybody, but I was really impressed with Pickett, and they do defend, and they do take care of the ball, and they're not fouling nearly as much as they used to. I think they're a much better team. I think a lot of teams will lose at Penn State this year. They've already beaten Illinois at Illinois, to get to a one possession game it's not a win, but and being open and honest, that's a pretty good effort against, I think, a pretty good team.
And I think most of the teams in the Big Ten North, the bottom's gotten better. Northwestern's better this year. I think Penn State, Minnesota's still not good, but a lot of those teams in the bottom, I'm kind of disappointed with Illinois, but it's still early. We don't really know where everyone is. Like I said, hopefully we can do well this week. We got 4 out of 5 at home. I've just repeated what I've already said. Just wanted to wish you guys a happy new year, and go Hawks.
You too. Thanks for the call. I do. I think the game of Rutgers is going to be a bear. That is one of the more difficult places to play.
Yes, it is.
I think Thursday's huge because similar to Penn State, I don't know if a lot of teams are going to win at Rutgers. They're pretty good, and they've got a great home court.
So Thursday is Indiana
at home. Yeah.
Okay, you knew that. I thought you said Thursday. Rutgers. Yeah.
I think you said Rutgers next weekend at Rutgers. Yeah.
Yeah, at Rutgers. Yeah, and then they do get 3 straight at home, so kind of an interesting scheduling quirk there. A couple questions in the chat before we get to James and Tony. Smiles per gallon says at least we still have that timeout to bring back to Iowa City. There's some sarcasm there. Fran is the worst in late game situations. How many of those must-score scenarios end in turnovers? Fran has always been an advocate for not using that timeout in that situation and trusting his players to run their stuff. Obviously, he's talking about the possession where Tony tried tossing it out to Chris, and of course, it got stolen by Lundy. Just your thoughts on that and that philosophy.
Well, yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I think in most cases, you're going to get a better shot coming down than calling timeout, because now you allow the defense to get set up as well. I think as a coach, you look and see what's happening, and if you sense that they're not on the same page, then maybe you take a timeout. But at least you'd let them bring it down to court and see, you're in an open court situation and maybe an advantage. I saw the play they were trying to run. They've run that play a lot where they run a staggered out of the left corner. So they brought Patrick off of 2 screens. Chris was the first screener, and I think Connor was the second. And then they put a shooter in the right corner, and the guards got the option of driving the lane line if they needed to, or they can go to the guy coming off the stagger for the 3. And then what they do is a lot of times they'll curl that guy without getting too complicated, and then they back screen the first screener to get a 3. And that was Chris. And I think that was what they were going to try to run. But Chris, for some reason, bailed on the play before he even got started. And I think he was coming over to set a ball screen. And unfortunately, Tony picked his dribble up before he got there. And instead of jump stopping, he jumps up in the air. Chris tries to separate, and there's where the turnover happens. So I don't blame it on the coaching. I think if they'd have stuck with their first play, I'd be interested to see what Chris says as to why he did what he did. But I've seen him run that play a lot of times, and a lot of times they've been successful with it. At the end of the game, that's the play they'll run because they have the option to shoot both a 3 and a 2. And they've had a lot of guards in the past that have been able to come down there and just make a good hard drive down the right lane and get a layup in that situation because the defense is not back and set. So unfortunately, they didn't execute it as well as they would have liked, obviously.
And that's to me is what it looked like Tony was going to do. Was just going to attack hard.
Yeah.
And try to get to the rim and draw a foul.
Yeah. And he took his right hand away, and then he came into the middle, and that's when Chris started to come for a ball screen. And unfortunately, he picked his dribble up. And now you can't get a ball screen, so he tries to separate. And instead of coming to a jump stop to where he can, take his time and make the pass, he kind of threw a flip pass, and guy made a good defensive play.
All right. Jason wants to know, Coach, how do you get your guys to play with that intensity from the tip instead of waiting till the last 5 minutes down 15?
Well, I thought they played with pretty good intensity for the whole entire game. When you're not shooting well, you look like you're not playing very hard. And then when you're making a great run, it looks like you're playing with great intensity. I thought both teams played hard for most of the game. Now, and in some cases, they didn't play well, both teams. But no, I thought their intensity was good throughout the game. They just didn't shoot the ball well in the first half, and they had some defensive breakdowns.
Kyle wants to know if both teams are in the lane during a free throw, it's still a reshoot, correct? Is it both teams are in?
I think that's a good question. I'm going to have to find that out, especially if both feet land at the same time. I'm guessing if both feet land at the same time, then it's a jump ball. But I don't know that for sure. I'm going to have to find that out.
I guess my question, Gary, is if that's the case, all right, and I was trying to think of an explanation for what the officials, and you said, well, maybe they just missed it. So it was pretty obvious. I don't know how you missed that.
Yeah, I think they missed it. I really do. And I think if they'd have called, I think it probably would have been a jump ball unless they felt one guy. And I know the previous caller thought that the Penn State kid got his foot in there a little before the Iowa kid did. The Iowa kid shouldn't even been near it. I mean, you don't even come close to stepping in come close to having a lane violation.
Well, he said he got tripped. That's what he said. He got tripped.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at it. You can't get tripped. Get yourself down in an athletic stance and be ready. You can't get tripped in a situation like that. Come on. Yeah. That's just a weak excuse.
But again, Chris missed.
He probably got tripped because he was leaning off balance, and then somebody bumps him, and then then you do fall into the lane, but you don't get off balance.
Chris missed a couple of huge free throws, including one that was a front end of a 1-on-1. Connor missed the front end of a 1-on-1. Those are killer. Second half, you're trying to make a comeback. Especially your best free throws. So you're going to be able to make those front ends. That's the equivalent.
Well, and what did Penn State shoot from the free throw line? They might have missed one or two. They didn't miss many.
For the game, I can tell you Penn State shot 14 of 16.
Yeah, they won the game at the free throw line in some respects.
And Iowa didn't shoot terrible from the free throw line, 16 to 22. But when you're trying to make a comeback, especially in that second half, and you would expect Chris to make those. I mean, he's built up that reputation for being one of their 2 or 3 best free throw shooters.
Yeah. So and he will be too. It's just one of those nights. I think Penn State's shooting percentages were really good at every level, and a big reason why they won the game. I think they probably shot close to 40% from 3, and I'm guessing they shot well over 50% from 2. And you just said they shot over 80% from the free throw line, so that's hard to win, giving up those numbers.
Ryan says, just jumping in, was Carver full today? I don't know if there's sarcasm in that. Obviously, they didn't play in Carver. They played at the Bryce Jordan Center, and it was far from full. Jason wants to know, what's the story with Nimmers? Has he been hurt all year? He's redshirting. So he had a wrist injury, I know, before the season started, and Fran has confirmed that he's redshirting. And then finally, Clint says, Gary, you mentioned gathering yourself, going up strong in the paint. Is it fair to say that sometimes shots in the paint stat can be deceiving because they aren't doing that? What am I reading? Am I reading that wrong, Gary?
No, I think he's got a really good point. And that being that developing post players, the biggest thing they've got to learn to do is to slow down. And when you go in there and shoot quick shots off balance, it's a lower percentage shot. You're not going to get as many fouls called. And so it's important to slow down. A lot of times we talked about shot faking, because when you shot fake, 1, you do slow down. 2, the guy might leave his feet and you can draw a foul. And then 3, you're more gathered so that when you do go to shoot it, you've got more power and more strength going at the basket than when you we always said that if you can't get all the way to the rim unmolested, then you should shoot off 2 feet, not off of 1. And you see a lot of players shoot off of 1 foot driving the lane that don't get all the way to the rim for a quote unquote layup. And that's a low percentage shot. And when you're playing against good teams, how many layups are you going to get? You shouldn't get very many. So the result is that you got to learn how to shoot off of 2 feet. And that includes guards, because guards, when they drive and come to a jump stop, what are they doing? They're making a post move. And so they've got to learn to do it just like big guys do. But the big thing is to get them to slow down and be stronger with the ball. And I thought in the first half, we shot the ball a little quick inside. And it was one reason why we didn't draw as many fouls and shoot as good a percentage.
Ryan, in response to your question, I mean, Filip Rebraca has been exceedingly consistent scoring the ball. But I think as we keep going back to defensively, I mean, again, I know this is simplifying it, but you gave up 83 to Penn State. This is a series that traditionally is not a real high-scoring series, if I recall. Now, you mentioned it, Gary. They shoot the three ball well. Lundy's really good. I mean, Lundy, I haven't watched Penn State much. I thought Lundy last few years has been kind of their guy, and he's no longer their guy. I mean, it's kind of a weird dynamic.
Tells you where their team's going. Yeah, no, it gives them more depth. I think it's going to, as he mentions, I think it's got to be by committee. I think Chris is obviously a go-to guy. I don't know if they've got any other go-to guys, but it doesn't mean they can't score. And we've talked about it before. They've got to get contributions from a lot of guys that score 8, 10, 12 points rather than 2 and 4. And then they got to get better on the defensive end, like almost every team.
Let's get to James, who's been on hold. James, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing? Happy New Year's to both of you.
James, you too.
Yeah, but one thing I want to say is and I'm not blaming Fran for this because Fran, when he's been there, he's built good rosters. You know what I'm saying? He's built, and I don't think the roster is built bad in a way. I just feel like some of the guards aren't. You have Peyton Sanford, who's a good shooter, but he's not making it a lot, right? So then you don't recruit other shooters a lot. The other guys aren't as good as shooters that you recruited. So it's once you have one guy off, you know who's going to late in games. I knew that play was going to Chris. Whether or not at the end of the game I knew it was going to Chris, you know who it's going to. So it kind of hurts in that retrospective. In a late game situation, you know who the ball's going to.
Well, I mean,
possibly, yeah, but it's also nice to have a guy. Yeah, now that play had a lot of options, and he just didn't run it well. And as I said before, that's a play they've run a lot, and I think that's the reason why he didn't call a timeout, because that's the play they run with 10, 15 seconds left in a one-possession game. They just come down and run that play, and unfortunately, they didn't run it well.
I agree with you, but Lewis or Bowen was in the corner. Lewis and Bowen are not really. To be honest with you, I give them that
can't
shot.
shoot, James.
I know, but my point is they were in the corner for the 3. That was my point. So that's kind of a decoy. He can't shoot very well. Or Bowen was in the corner for the 3. One of them were, and they can't shoot that well.
Well, that's we've talked about that. They just don't have a lot of options to who they're going to put in the corner.
That's right.
He had been playing pretty good defense, and that's why he was out there. And the play they still could have gotten a shot off. If they'd have ran that thing a little bit better, and that's all you want. You want to get a good shot off and hopefully make it. And unfortunately, they didn't get the shot off.
I don't disagree with
that's why I'd like to see Desante. I mean, I know Josh Dix is out, but the freshman Desante Bowen's a better shooter. I mean, he showcased at the high school. He's a better shooter than getting 0 attempts. I mean, played 12 minutes tonight. I'd like to see him play a little bit more, because I don't see much of a drop off on the other end between him and Ulyss. And he's not making. I mean, you look at turnovers between those two guys tonight. 0 for both. 0 for both tonight. So I give credit to Aaron for cleaning that up, but I don't know. I think Desante's a better 3-point shooter than maybe we think, James.
Yeah, I agree with you for sure, but I feel obviously in this situation, there's the bigger 2 options. Is can go to either Tony's and keep it, or he's can give it to a Bradshaw or Murray. You know what I'm saying? In my eyes, those are 3 options. The other guys really don't do as much, which obviously I think every team has it that way. But you get 32 from Chris, it's kind of tough to lose. But my point is, I feel like they definitely did tighten up stuff in the second half, which is, I think, a good sign at least. The defense maybe wasn't as good, but they were hitting shots. So that's always a good point, because we haven't seen that in a while, where it was they were at least tightening up and hitting a little bit of shots.
Yeah, I thought offensively in the second half they were very good. They got a lot of good shots. They got to the free throw line. They scored quickly. Very few bad shots. I thought offensively they were very good in the second half.
And Gary, that is exactly what I was going to observe. It seemed like early in the half, they made a concerted effort to attack the rim, got to the free throw line, And that just changes things, right? I mean, just remember from one simple perspective, just seeing the ball go in, right? And when you're trying to make a comeback at any point in that second half, stopping the clock is advantage you.
Well, and you get the team into the penalty sooner. So now if they make a dumb foul in the backcourt, you're shooting free throws and you're scoring when the clock stops. So if you're going to make well, you should do it anytime. But if you're going to make a comeback, that's probably the first thing you want to do. Okay, let's attack the basket and let's get this team in the penalty as quick as we can so that we can score when the clock stopped. And they did a very good job of that. And it wasn't surprising that they shot the three better in the second half because a lot of those came off of penetration and things like that. So now that was a good sign. I thought offensively they were very good in the second half.
And I think the guy on the screen right now, Tony Perkins, I think he may be the key for this team having the type of season we thought they could have, because he's really the only guy that I have a lot of confidence in taking the ball and scoring off the dribble in that backcourt. I mean, I like the potential of DeSante. Ulis he's going to struggle with his shot, and Tony has proven he can make jump shots. Made a couple early tonight. I think Tony's ability to be aggressive or willingness to be aggressive is huge because he hasn't been as authoritative these last few games. But again, we saw that tonight, even early in the game. I know they fell behind, but he attacked, and they're a better team when he's aggressive.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think his confidence grew as the half went on, where he probably lacked a little bit of that over the course of the last couple of games, which is understandable when you don't play well and you start thinking too much and things like that. So his play was encouraging. Obviously, Chris played phenomenally, and so there were some bright spots. When you lose, those are hard to find, but progress was made.
They definitely feel like progress was made because he says when you lose, it's hard to find bright spots. But at least we found bright spots with this game. I feel like Nebraska, there was no bright spots.
Mm-hmm.
So
the good news is the bright spot came in the second half. Like if you come out in the first half and you're playing great, in the second half you shoot 30%.
Then I'd still be more scared for next game.
Coming back home.
Yeah. But one thing I want to say too is how do you think Sanford gets going? I understand. For me, the way I always coach is obviously, and I think he's done this a little bit, but he also isn't making these shots either. But I say try to go inside out. Start with the inside shot first. Try to see that fall from the inside, and then work your way back out. You know what I mean? But I feel like he's doing that and it's still not going in. So I don't know if there's something that you think he should do different or not.
Well, Sean Morris did make. I think Sean Morris, by the way, is terrific. I just,
he's an Iowa guy.
Yeah, he made an Iowa. He made a comment about that very subject tonight, Gary, about Sanford trying to get to the line. I mean, just see the ball go through. And Sanford even made a comment at one point in this game. I think he said he's aiming his shot. He's not just shooting; he's aiming his shot.
Yeah,
so,
well, that could happen when you're struggling. I think he takes a lot of contested, tough shots, and I think that is matured into a real shooting slump. I think that's where it started. I think he just took a lot of really difficult shots, and he thinks he's shooting bad when in fact he's taken shots that are low percentage. Not all of them, but that's part of the reason why you like him is he's not afraid to put it up. Now I think he is getting a little bit hesitant, but even the shots he took today, the 1-3 he took at the top of the key, that was 2-3 feet behind the 3-point line. That thing was off so quick. It just, I think he needs to get some more wide open looks in rhythm and like Sean said, get some going to the basket where he can draw some fouls. And it's a tough thing to go through. I feel for the kid because he's definitely better than what he's playing. So, and they need him. So hopefully this is not going to last much longer.
Another thing too that I want to say is you were talking about the coaching staff earlier. I understand that he hired Gatens and he hired Courtney Eldridge, and I understand the relationship with the players and him is very well, right? But like you said, Beeline going away from that kind of helped them with their defense. And I feel like it's kind of the same with football as well too with the whole Bryant situation. But more the fact that it's people his team is comfortable with. You don't get a defensive guy because you want your guys to be comfortable. So I get that's an important thing to do. But it's also sometimes about what's going to help more instead of what they're comfortable with, if that makes sense. In my eyes, at least it is.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Sounds good.
But I mean, we'll see. In general, Indiana is always going to be a tough game, but I just hope they keep playing better. And you never know. We'll see what happens.
There you go, James. I appreciate the call, sir, as always.
Thanks, James.
Enjoy your night.
Thanks, man. All right. Let's we've got one more caller here, and we'll wrap this thing up. Clint wants to know: are bigger guards and forwards backing us down going to be the norm this season?
Well, that's now that kid is very good at that, and he's big and he is strong, and I don't think there's any doubt that was one of their offensive plans. Whether other teams got guards like that can do it, they very well may after seeing that. So we'll have to wait and see. But he is very good at that. He might be as good as anybody in the league doing that. From a guard
Ryan says, "Have you ever seen somebody start?" I don't believe he's 0 for 20 to start conference, but I think the comment was made that he's 0 for 20 from the field in conference play, and we're talking about Peyton Sandford. Have you ever seen anybody, any regular?
Not to that extent. No, it's amazing to me. You'd figure one would just. I mean, you see guys shoot bank threes and they go in and balls at the back of the rim and go up over the backboard and come back in. You think he'd had at least a couple of those by now. So you got to feel for him.
And then DC Hawkeye coach, what exit did you grow up near? That's
exit 4.
Okay. That means nothing to me, but our guy out on the East Coast wants to know. So, and finally, Jet Pilot coach, do teams that play extremely aggressive defense count on refs' natural tendency to call fouls somewhat evenly?
That's a real good point. Some teams, I'm not going to say a lot, but some teams, I know some of the Purdue teams in the past with Coach Katie, they would play so aggressive and they figured they were going to do some fouling, but because they're so aggressive, they're going to bank on officials not calling everything. And then if they're real aggressive and they can drive, cause problems with your offense, then it's worth the few fouls that they get. We kind of played opposite. We didn't want to foul at all and tried to play solid defense without fouling. So there's a lot of ways to skin the cat, but there are certainly some teams that, no question, they play real aggressive and their plan is that the officials won't call everything. And if you're not strong with the ball and make good reads and cuts and things like that against an aggressive defense, then the few fouls they give up are worth it with their ability to disrupt your offense.
I want to thank Brad Van Meter and his team down at State Farm. Give them a call for a quote on an insurance premium, 515-256-6480. They've been in business since 1999, part of the largest auto insurance company in the country. Brad and his small team serving you better down on Fleur Drive in Des Moines. Visit them online at www.bradvanmeter.com. Thank you to Brad and his team for supporting the show. And let's get to our final caller of the night. Tony, you are the last but not least man here. You got a different, are you in a I was going to
no,
say
no, that's fine. Yeah. That's like
this side.
That's like it's like a metal case. I'm in a garage. I have like a man cave in my garage.
There you go.
So it's just like I reorientated. That's why it looks different than normal.
Did the wife kick you out? Did she kick you out of the house?
No, I was in the garage before. It's just reorientating. Yeah, she always kicks me out of the house for the basketball games, but that's fine.
Yeah.
I had a quick question for Coach Close. I remember hearing or reading about this. Do you remember in your time at Wisconsin, people complaining, or not complaining really, but like when you go on a road game, the ball, like for example, we played at Nebraska, they're an Adidas school. Penn State's a Nike school. Maryland's an Under Armour school. I noticed, like, is it the grooves or like the seams? I hear people say that, especially Iowa guards, like shooting is different with the Nike ball versus the Adidas and the Under Armour. You're nodding your head.
There's no doubt. There are some differences in the basketballs. That's why at Wisconsin we had every kind of basketball that every opponent would have, and during practice for that preparation, that's the only ball we would use to try to get ready for you go on the road and Penn State plays with an Under Armour ball or whatever the case may be. No, the balls are all a little bit different. And, I think a good shooter will tell you not that much difference, but there is some difference, that enough so that we got every basketball that an opponent had just to, be prepared.
And I just say that because I think off the top of my head, Nebraska is an Adidas school and we're a Nike school. And maybe that may have had something to do with how bad. I mean, we did shoot absolutely awful. There's no denying that in Nebraska. And I just wonder if there might have been something to do with that. You know?
Well, I don't know to the extent of that, but there is some validity to the balls being a little bit different. I don't think to the point where you shoot whatever it was 19 for 73, but there is definitely some differences.
They've played at Nebraska before.
Well, they have, but I mean, it's a little different roster, but I mean, it's the same as before. But
yeah,
I just know you hear people say that in interviews, the ball might feel a little different. Another thing I want to add on is, I think it was the last podcast, Coach Close said he feels very strongly that Carver Hawkeye will be sold out or close to sold out this Thursday. I agree with his sentiment there. It's the 40th anniversary of Carver Hawkeye, or 50th. It's either 40th or 50th. And I will.
It got to be probably 40th. Yeah, it's not 50.
It was kind of alluded to in earlier callers about our next 5 games. I think we go undefeated in the next 5 games. I'm just saying that. I mean, I'm going out on a limb here. I'm just saying that. The reason I say this is because 4 of the next 5 are at home. The road game at the Rack, which we've had some decent success there, and we played them tough. I just think this team needs some home cooking, and it's been a rough road these last 2. And then after that Eastern Illinois game, I'm sure it couldn't be pretty for them.
Yeah, I think it's nice that they're coming home. Hopefully they're going to get a great crowd and play well and get a win under their belt and build up some momentum. Things can change quickly if something like that can happen. So that's what we got to wish for.
I hope you both are right. I expressed a doubt the other night, and I'll express it again.
Should we have a little bet? Should we bet a dinner?
I owe you a dinner anyways. So
I haven't forgotten.
I'll tell you what, I'll buy the appetizer as well. If I just don't think on a weeknight with the I know that you're getting past finals and whatnot, but this team.
One negative is I saw it's at 8:00, which that doesn't help.
It is late, yeah.
But I think I got faith. I think there's going to be a good crowd there. Indiana always brings out a good crowd, so I'm hoping for a packed house.
One thing I was going to
truck down there.
What's that?
I might even make the truck down there to add a little to that attendance.
Well, maybe instead of the university promoting that this is the 40th year anniversary, they just need to promote that Coach Gary Close is going to be in the house, and then everybody will flock to the arena.
Then it might hurt attendance. So,
Tony.
I wonder, late in the games, and obviously this is game script or however you want to call it. We know we start to press and get more aggressive with our press, because usually it's a token press. And when we get more aggressive with our press, it kind of reminds me of the press you and Dr. Tom ran. I guess Dr. Tom and you, however you want to say, why don't they do something like that more often earlier in the game?
Well, I think one thing is they've got a real lack of depth. And if you're going to press, you got to have some bodies or you're going to wear yourself out. And so I think that's probably as big a reason as any. I think the reason you saw the press was because they were behind and they had to do something to, get more possessions and maybe get the tempo going up a little bit to get more possessions and maybe cause some disruption and turnovers, whole reasons why you press. But I think he's a little bit hampered pressing because his bench is so short.
It just seems to be so effective, but he could be, like you said, he could be hamstrung by the roster limitations of not being able to go so deep.
Exactly.
You have the injuries, but it's effective. I just wish he could pull it out a little more, but I get it. The other thing was the Connor free throw thing. If you notice, if you rewatch the game, Connor was chatting with the referee a lot after that lane violation was missed.
He's always chatting with the official.
Well, he is, but I mean, it goes back to my eye contact. Like, he literally turned around on when the free throw was going up, and you could obviously see he was talking to the referee.
I get tired of that, Tony. He needs to just shut up and let his dad do that. I know that sounds bad, and I'm not, maybe that sounds disrespectful to Connor, but he's been here 6 years, Gary. I just get tired of seeing that, and I know it doesn't help given the fact that he's the coach's son. It doesn't help as far as I don't know, just the narrative out there. Does that bother you when you see a player repeatedly, especially in the college level? I mean, Luka Doncic, I'm a huge Mavs fan. Luka's always in the ears of the officials, and he needs to stop too. But it's different at the college level, isn't it?
Yeah, I think to some extent. I think you got to pick your spots. And so you've got a voice on the floor. I'm guessing he's one of the captains. But the last thing you want to do is show up an official because they're human and they'll nail you if so you got to be careful as to how you do it and when you do it, and it's a little bit of an art that I think for the most part he does a pretty good job of, but at times he might get a little chatty.
There was one point in that game late where he was chatting with the official going into a timeout, and Fran, you kind of yelled at him and told him to get in the huddle. You could see what he's doing. Go ahead.
The problem is that when you start worrying so much about the officiating that affects your game, that's a problem. And so, hey, we got to get to the next possession. We got to get to the next event, and we got to do that right away. So I think that's probably the reason why he did that. We got to get in the huddle. We got to figure out what we're doing here.
Real quick, I'm totally not related to Iowa, but Gary, Luka Doncic has been doing ridiculous things in the basketball.
Yeah, incredible.
Can you just talk a moment about what you and I have never talked about Luka Doncic?
He's something. I don't watch a lot of NBA unless it's one of a player that I know or until it gets to the playoffs. So I did not see that game, but I did see the free throw at the end where he extended into overtime. But for a point guard to put up those kind of numbers is sick. I mean, it's just unbelievable. He is really a special player. And what is he, like 24? It's crazy to think how good he is as young as he is.
Just keep this in mind too, Gary. He scored, just to give you a quick December 23rd, he scored 50, 10, and 8 against the Rockets. By the way, has not taken a break. 2 days later, he puts up 32, 9, and 9. Then against the Knicks, he goes for 60, 21, and 10. 2 days later, he goes against the Rockets, puts up 35, 13, and 12. And then last night, he goes up on the road at San Antonio and goes for 51, 9, and 6.
Crazy.
I mean, those are just ridiculous. I've never seen, and obviously they're the best scorers to ever do it, but a stat line over time like that. Anyway, he won 6 straight, so he's doing
he's something. He's worth the price of admission for sure.
Anyway, sorry to take time away from you.
Oh, no, you're fine. I guess I should have added on to my point. Like, it was making the point that the referee missed the call, that he allowed Connor to turn around and talk to him.
Probably.
I guess that's what I was trying to get at was
they missed it.
It was so blatantly obvious that the
yeah.
Penn State post player was first in the lane, and it happens. He missed the call. And the referee, that's what I was trying to get to, is not the point. Like, I agree, Connor does talk with the refs a lot. But in this situation, I think it was the referee realizing he missed it.
Yep.
And Connor turned around and talked to him.
Yeah.
They claimed they had 6,000 people in this arena. I'd love to understand their math.
Well, that's an unbelievable number for an arena that size. That's just an unbelievable.
Well, it's probably an 18,000 seat arena. It's a big arena, way too big for that.
But when I looked at the end lines, there's no one behind the hoop.
No, but I will say this about their end lines, and that's why the design of the arena is bad. Their end lines are way behind the basket. Those are not good seats. Okay. You're almost better to be in the second deck in the middle of the court than on those end lines. It's not like you're right underneath the basket. You're a ways away from the court. So,
and I don't know. I'm just going off. I've never been there. You obviously.
It's my least favorite arena in the whole league. It's a dump. Yeah, it's not much. I shouldn't say it's a dump, but it's not. It's dark. It's dark, and it's not well.
It kind of reminds me, and in Madison Square Garden's not a dump, but it kind of reminds me of Madison Square Garden or Chrysler, where like around the arena, it's all dark. If you look
Yeah,
at
I
it
don't
from
have
the
a problem
TV.
with that. It's just it's so cavernous. I mean, it's just big. I think they did it for hockey and for concerts and things like that, and not for basketball. And I'd be curious how well they do with that because it's killing their attendance. I'm telling you, when they played at the old, I can't remember what they called it, the activity center or the athletic.
Yeah.
That place was loud and it was packed, and it was a really tough place to play. But they probably only seat 8,000 people. So they should have built if they were going to build a new arena, they should have built an arena like 12,000 or 14,000 like Breslin. But put some 19,000 seat arena on that campus was dumb. But what are you going to do?
What's when you coached, did you go to the RAC, the Rutgers
Yeah,
Athletic
yeah,
Center?
yeah. We played.
Like, what's that? Like, that seems like a perfect capacity size.
That's
for
a
them.
lot like a lot like what the old Penn State gym was like. That's an old gym that's been there forever, and they've remodeled it. But that gym goes back a lot of years, I'm sure.
Gary, I'm sorry. I just got to give this comment a shout out. Peter says, I have been diagnosed with multiple personality disorder. If there were 6,000 people there, half of them were me. Anyways, anything else, Tony?
No, I hope you guys had a Merry Christmas, and hopefully we have a Happy New Year for all of us. And I look forward to talking about the, I'll say 95% guarantee Iowa wins on Thursday.
There you go.
Thank you, Tony.
I will be here. I'll be here to eat my crow, no matter. I'll be here. But how many fans? I think it's at least. I said 95% guarantee they win. I would say it's 90 to 95% full, if not 100.
Okay, so how many fans? I do the math on that. How many?
Probably about 13,000.
So yeah, over 13. I agree. I think it'll be over.
All right,
13.
I'll say they don't. I'll say they do not even come close to 15,000. So we'll see. Somebody will be right. Somebody will be wrong. We'll have the box score. So
we'll pull it up. Yeah.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
And it's going to be a legit crowd because I don't think they're going to get a huge walk up. 8:00 and having lost 3 games in a row.
Appreciate you hanging tight a little bit longer. People, I think there's a sense of optimism with some here, Gary. After that first half, I was wondering what kind of a turnout we're going to have on the show, but I think there's a sense of optimism. Brandon says, do we see first half Iowa or second half Iowa against Indiana? Boy, you obviously like to see second half Iowa.
I hope so.
And certainly one would think that they can carry some momentum over. That's a really good Indiana team. Maybe the best team in the conference. Probably not. I mean, Purdue's obviously, Indiana's a preseason favorite. Purdue is the number 1 team in the country, but really talented Indiana bunch. Who Iowa struggled. I mean, last time these two teams played was in the semifinals of the Big Ten tournament. Iowa needed a buzzer beater from Jordan Bohannon. Really struggled to contain Trace Jackson Davis. They're going to need a big game out of Philip Rebraca, who struggled on the glass tonight. I mean, I give Penn State credit. They made it hard on Philip. Just 5 boards tonight for Philip Rebraca. So he'll need to step up. And
he did a good job on. Mm-hmm.
Robert says, do they actually run plays for Sanford? They really don't, right, Gary? We talked about this last time.
Well, they've run a few, but not a lot. I mean, they're a motion offense. They always have been, and I think that's got something to do with it in the sense that you got to learn how to get open without the ball and use screens and things like that. That he'll get better at as he gets older. But they run a few for him.
And Ryan wants to know if you can pull a guy's scholarship based on play. You can bench a guy, right? I mean, he's going to – can you pull a guy's scholarship and tell them to transfer, Gary?
Well, the scholarship is only a year-to-year renewal.
Okay.
So you could. It's not recommended. I mean, it's done, but you get a reputation of pulling scholarships because guys don't develop like you thought they were. That doesn't bode real well for your program. So – but like I said, it's a year-to-year thing. So technically, you could get rid of everybody after a year if that's what you want to do.
I mean, I think the consensus is if a guy's not playing, he's probably going to want to go somewhere else anyways because most guys don't want to ride the bench. So if Riley Mulvey's here next year, not playing, then I'm guessing he enters the portal after year 3 because he wants to play somewhere, even if it's a level down. I mean, guys come play college basketball to play college basketball. So
Probably. I mean, I guess you can look at it. Hey, he loves the place and wants to get a good education and things like that would keep him there. But or he thinks he can, continue to develop. But on the other hand, there's some, especially this day and age, that hey, if they're not playing 25 minutes, they're out of there and they're moving on. So
right.
We'll have to wait and see.
And final question of the night: do we even have a shot at the NCAA tournament? I mean, we're not out of the NCAA tournament. We're 3 conference games in. But boy, you do need to go on a run at some point, right? I mean, you play.
I think for sure, and I think I hope I'm wrong, and I could very well be. I don't think we're going to get as many teams from the Big Ten in as we've had in the past. Right now, we only have 3 teams ranked, so that's a little bit of a worry, but that could change too. But they've got work to do. There's no question. They've got to get some. They got to get some W's. You always got a chance to win the Big Ten tournament, but they'd rather have it sealed before they get to there.
And they did win the tournament last year, so
right.
Maybe something going on their side there. All right, folks. Appreciate everybody being here. Coach Close being here. Thank you, Gary. Enjoyed it as always, and we'll look forward to a game on Thursday night. A reminder to everyone to subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends. Word of mouth is huge, so please do that. And we'll see you Thursday night. An 8 p.m. Central Time tip-off. I encourage everybody to be there. I will not be there.
Why not?
I'm going to be out of town that day, Gary, and not out of town in Iowa City. So, hey, are you going to be there? You say you're going to be there. Are you actually going to be there? You are going to.
I think I'm going to be there. Mm-hmm.
So this is Iowa. Is this going to be Iowa postgame with Coach Gary Close?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. It might be on the old telephone or that late. If I go that late at night, I'll probably stay in a hotel. I'm not going to drive back at 11 o'clock. No.
I was going to say, you're going to be asleep by the time we start the post-game show, or?
I'll probably take a nap prior to, but then I'll be ready to go.
Okay. All right. Well, sounds good. We'll see everybody on Thursday. This show and all of our longer shows podcasted from the Hawkeye of the Storm on Spotify, Apple, Anchor, Google, Amazon, etc. And again, we'll see you Thursday night for Coach Gary Close. I'm Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Have a great night.